Have you ever wondered if it was possible to beat every game for one game console? Some consoles would be easier, of course, having less than 100 total games for its entire life cycle. Some consoles have an average time to beat a game much lower than other consoles, so that would also make the overall number not nearly as scary. And then we begin to reach over 1,000 games for one console. How could anyone possibly have the time to play 2,000, 3,000, or even 4,000 games before they die? Is there anyone willing to take on the massive challenge of beating thousands of games just to say they've beat every game for a single console? Welcome to the elite world of console challengers. The console challenge seems simple, but let me go over a couple base rules that most of the new challengers and the old challengers follow as they go through their journey. The first and most important choice is what console you'll be playing. Then you'll choose how many games you will play overall, because each of the systems comes with different regions worth of games, as well as a differing number of unique titles for the console. You can then try to figure out what your basis for beating a game is, as there are many different games, some with credits, some without credits, and you'll have to figure out what constitutes as beating that game. The challenger then begins their journey and follows a couple simple rules while they play each of the games. If you're using an emulator, you must disable cheats and save states so that you cannot cheat your way through the game, otherwise it won't really count. The use of guides isn't strictly forbidden, but the more guides you use for each of the games, the less it looks like you beat it on your own. It doesn't necessarily matter how you choose the games you play, but using a wheel to choose a random one is very popular, as well as viewers choosing and the challenger choosing themselves. Okay, I'm sure you have some questions about the interpretation of how you actually beat a game and what games are included in a challenge, but that comes down to the individual runner themselves. The rules I stated aren't necessarily set in stone, so how you handle this part is up to you. Let's use the PlayStation 1 as an example for both of the things I just talked about. The first one being, how do you actually constitute beating a game? Well, that really comes down to just getting to the end of the game and seeing credits. Once you play through a story, generally you will find credits, although that is not the case in every game, such as Wild Arms, where the credits come about 2 hours in and then you continue playing the game. Obviously, that wouldn't be the end of the game. You'd want to go further because I believe there's a second set of credits you can see, or at the very least, there's an end to the story. You might find yourself playing a collection of minigames for either a kid's game or just a game that is all about minigames, and there might not be a way to get to the end credits. Usually, as long as you play each one of the minigames one time and win, once you hit all of the minigames, you're good. What about collections? Something like one of the Final Fantasy collections for the PlayStation 1, where you have multiple Final Fantasy games. Generally, as long as you play all of the main games of a collection, such as the ones that are unlocked from the beginning if there are other ones to unlock, then you can call it complete, which means you'd have to beat several Final Fantasy games to their individual credit sections to call it good. I think a good rule to follow is if the game you are playing has a speedrun community, go to the community and see where they end the game. They are literally speeding to the end of it as fast as possible, so they would probably have the best idea of where the end of a game is. Of course, though, we will always run into those few niche games that really need lots of consideration, and we end up deciding how the game ends. Now let's take a look at the other issue. How many games do you actually play in your challenge? Let's use the PS1 again. It has about 4,200 plus games. If the challenger decides to only play the North America games, they would only be playing around 1,278 total games. If they choose to play every region's games, you're looking more at 4,221 games total. But what if the challenger really doesn't like how many sports titles there are and how little they differ between each of the games, such as the Madden series? They may choose to remove all of those sports games, or maybe just reduce it down to playing one of each of the different varieties. If you're playing every single region's games, then you might remove all of the visual novels from the Japanese collection, since there are so many, and if you don't know how to speak Japanese or read Japanese, that would make things a lot more difficult. Like I said, these rules are not set in stone, so as a challenger yourself, you get to choose. My hope is that explaining these few rules to you and just letting you know that this challenge exists gets some more people interested in joining us so that they can also try to beat all of the games for a single console.
Yes.
Bad.
Yes, let's go.
No! Alright, GG. That is Super Monkey Ball.
Like, that's the ending, like, and everyone died. The end.
Oh no.
Yeah. Is game number 9 complete? Baby.
Oh my god.
That's it, we're done. I'm stopping the timer. We're officially done.
Over the past 3 years, I've been doing the PlayStation 2 console challenge, and I've met a lot of really cool people. And the reason that I wanted to do this video was to also showcase exactly who is playing some of the challenges. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but I have with me 12 different challengers from several different consoles who've decided to talk about their journey so far. Some of them brand new to the challenge, some of them over 10 years into it. So let's take a look at the motivations behind why they chose the consoles they did, any special rules they have, and some of the upcoming things they have they're excited for. The GBA is a fantastic handheld console, and the Bread Ghost was willing to take on the challenge. Originally creating content around 3D Mario speedruns like Mario Sunshine and Mario Galaxy, he eventually noticed the Mexican Runner, who was one of the original NES runners for the console challenge, and decided that he was going to do the same thing, but with his favorite console, the GBA. The focus on this challenge here is beating all of the North American released GBA games. Getting to the end of a game is as simple as finding some credits or at the very least a final cutscene or end screen which you can call beaten. Here is an example of 2 games that don't have an end credits, the first one being Yu-Gi-Oh! Ultimate Masters World Championship, which took about 121 hours doing every challenge and beating every opponent, and Dr. Sudoku, who had 1,000 puzzles attached to it and it took 189 hours to beat. The Bread Ghost leans heavily on original hardware, although there are a few times when it would be necessary to use some sort of emulation, although he still sticks as close as he can to the original console. Originally picking what game was next was left to the viewers and then would pile up in a queue, eventually becoming kind of a burden. So he changed it to be something much more manageable. A 5-game queue that he allows some viewers to pick some games, but also includes specific games such as 2 sports games per 10 games, that way it keeps things fresh. At the time of writing this, he is on his 325th game, Doom, out of 947 total games, and just recently passed the 1/3 way mark. His difficulties follows a common theme within the console challenger community, especially when your console has a lot of games and will take a lot of time. The thought that this might not be worth it, the mental strain of seeing how many games you have in front of you. I'm certain most runners will feel this way at some point during their own challenges. One special mention is the puzzle game Snood, which seems to be inhumanly impossible to actually beat. I'll let you check out his channel to see what exactly that means. However, the very last game, the anchor, the shining star at the end of the challenge that he's excited for, is Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team. It's important to be able to look at the very end of the challenge and see a game that you are so ready to play, you can't wait to get to it. The link to Bread Ghost's channel will be in the description, so please check it out if you're interested in some GBA running. It's now time for everyone's favorite console that comes with a pre-installed handle, the GameCube. Raimi began with some randomized Pokemon challenges, but found that his friend, The Beast, who is a well-known N64 runner, inspired and encouraged him to pick up his favorite console to do the same thing he was doing. This challenge consists of beating every single game, all regions, all compilation discs. Each game is chosen at random by a large wheel, although the community does get to vote on a few as well as his own free picks to make sure that there are always some cool big ticket games just around the corner. Common to many other challenge runners, the ending is decided on a game-by-game basis. As an example, in Simpsons Road Rage, he grinded money for 10 hours straight just so he could get $1 million to unlock the credits themselves. The community was fine with him stopping there, but he felt it wasn't right until he did. At the time of writing, he has just beaten game number 50 out of a total of 651. Raimi makes videos of each of the games he's beaten, similar to The Beast, and doing so is very difficult, as making an entire video is probably the hardest thing to do. Playing and beating the games is the fun part. There are so many games on the GameCube to look forward to, and he hasn't completed some titles like Wind Waker and Pikmin and Mario Sunshine and Metroid Prime. A lot of the S-tier games are just too fun to wait to play. However, there are a few hidden gem games he hasn't played himself and wanted to when he was younger, such as Billy Hatcher and Chibi Robo. However, baseball games are just not Raimi's cup of tea, which I can agree with, as well as some of the Japanese games that are going to be next to impossible to play without some sort of patches. The time to beat a game can sometimes be scary, and some of the collections that have multiple games in them could take upwards of 100 hours, and that's not always the most fun to do. If you're interested in seeing 651 of those tiny little discs being beaten, Raimi's channel is down in the description. The original Xbox has a weird controller, but Big Tall Not Small was not having it and decided he was going to take on the challenge. What began as just a fun theme for his channel also grew to something more important for him, game preservation. And honestly, he's right. There aren't always full game playthroughs of all of these old or niche games, especially on the OG Xbox, and having even more details about those games instead of just a no commentary playthrough is important. This challenge includes beating every original Xbox game ever officially released. Any percent, any difficulty, getting to those credits. When it's time to pick up a game from the Japanese collection, he has a friend who helps him translate some of those games so he can play them a lot easier. As of the time of writing, he has reached game 295 out of 992 games. Every so often on those modded consoles, you just find games that won't run, and that is a difficulty when trying to do so many games from other regions. But probably the biggest difficulty is time and money, as it takes a long time to play some of these games, especially when you get close to 1,000 games or more, and money is a large factor when trying to buy physical for some of these older consoles, which the bubble of retro games has just exploded. The silver lining in all of this, of course, are the couch co-op games, which he looks forward to playing with Dreamy Magenta Sheep. I mean, who can say no to playing couch co-op with their best friend? If you like the feel of that OG Xbox controller, both his channel and his partner's channel will be down in the description. If you haven't thrown your Wiimote through the TV yet, then join Storster on their journey towards the Wii Console Challenge. Well-known speedrunner Storster began her journey through the Wii Console Challenge not too long ago, but it was her favorite console growing up, playing games like Mario Kart Wii and Super Smash Bros. Brawl. 30 games deep in a 1,255 game console challenge, they're only doing North American releases, and all of the games physically. Other than finding the credits to most games, if that's not possible, then a reasonable goal is given to the chat to agree upon. For example, the game You Draw, which doesn't really actually have an end and is more just a tool, they agreed that at least an hour had to be played and exploring each of the different modes so that you can call it beaten. The biggest difficulty so far is such a silly one for them to have done for this game, Rock Band. Storcer bought a guitar controller for the first Rock Band, but for some reason it's not compatible with the second game, needed to get an adapter. Sounds like that stuff is just convoluted. Admitting to the most heinous of crimes, Storcer has not yet played a Zelda game and is really excited to try one. But of course, the sports games rear their ugly head, especially the Cabela's hunting games, which there seems to be like 15 or 16 of those things flying around out there. But let's not forget all of those Mahjong games that are just somehow tacked on to every console in existence. If swinging around a Wiimote is your cup of tea, join Storcer for their battle for the Wii Console Challenge. Link is in the description. Our first PS1 challenge runner is the Croaster, who got a little bit of inspiration from the Beast, just like some of the other runners here, but they also realized all the PS1 games they owned really should be played. And instead of their original idea of playing for 30 minutes and each of the games, they decided to develop it into actually doing the whole library and beating each of the games. He was a little worried at first about stepping on the toes of some other challenge runners who are already doing the PS1 challenge, but always remember this: you are always welcome to do the challenge. We want you to do the challenge. It's cool to do the challenge. Please come do the challenge with us. The Croaster is focusing pretty much only on the North American releases because language barriers are a big deal when you're trying to play games, especially those Japanese visual novels. There are times when he'll bend the rules, such as Spyro the Dragon getting 100% of the gems, sounds like a good time, or when the difficulty of a fighting game is so hard, like Battle Arena Toshinden, that the only way to get some kind of ending for a character is to pump up the difficulty. A good thing he brings up is playing multiple characters in a game that have similar content. If the content's too similar, you could probably skip one of the characters, but for him on Resident Evil, he plays through both of the characters since both characters' stories are different enough that it might be fun to play through them. At the time of writing this, he is on game number 23 of 1,278 North American games. Most of the difficulties came from motivation and time problems, something all the other runners can attest to. However, he had a unique problem with his CD drive breaking and spinning out of control wildly, so he ended up having to play off some ROMs for the time. And he's preaching to the choir when he says he's dreading those sports games. There are so many sports games on the early PlayStation consoles. However, he's excited to go back through some of the old Final Fantasy games he hasn't played for some time, as well as survival horror games and fighting games. And maybe there's a mistake here, but he says Detective Barbie? Regardless of this, if you'd like to see one of the largest console libraries being beaten into submission, go check out his channel, which is in the description. Our second PlayStation 1 challenge runner is Super Retro Polygons, who began watching Morgan Just Games play a lot of Commodore 64 and Amiga titles and thought he wanted to do the same by playing the PlayStation 1. Originally having no real goal in mind, he makes the narrator blush by saying that PS2 or Die's channel was a really crazy idea, and once he got to know all the PS2 console challengers, he decided to dive right into the PS1. His goal is to beat every single PS1 game in all regions, save for some educational, casino, pachinko, mahjong, shogi-style games, which makes sense. There's a lot of those and they all feel very much the same. Something no one's mentioned yet is also the adult-oriented games. There are some games in the challenge that are either illegal to own, considering games like the Guy game on the PS2, or not able to be played on Twitch or YouTube unless heavily edited. He has his own collection of games but uses emulation as it's probably the easiest way to do things like this, and even uses adapters to use his original PS1 controllers on the emulator. The almighty wheel chooses his games for him, as he's beaten 30 of the 3,556 games that he's decided to beat for the challenge. You just can't get away from those sports games and even the racing games, which some of them are just not that fun. He also says he has difficulties with a Japanese game where the text was displayed in a way that translation tools wouldn't work, so he had to put it away for now. Hopefully there's a patch sometime soon. There are two specific games though, Clock Tower 2 and Martian Gothic, which seem to be kinda icky games. Super Retro Polygons also enjoys his way of streaming where he does 2 games in one stream. He'll play one game for half the time and the second game for the other half to keep it fresh. If you'd like to see more of those beautiful PS1 Jaggies, head on over to his channel with the link in the description. Our first PS2 challenge runner is Psyched Plays PS2, who had his first video for his first game debut 11 years ago. He had begun collecting the PS2 games, and when he had around 200 titles, he saw the Mexican runner doing NES Mania, which gave him the idea to do it on the PS2. He's doing all of this on the original hardware and beating every game that is out for the PlayStation 2. The goal, of course, is to reach credits. If there's no credits, like sports games, you just gotta beat a season with any team, which that's kind of what I do too. He's about to hit game number 500 of a total of 4,558 games, excluding things like the Guy game. He has found himself going back and beating games properly, as sometimes over the years we find that games aren't properly beaten for one reason or another. Maybe the community gets together and says, hey, we think you should play this game a little more because it's not technically beaten. We'll all go back and beat those games a little better so that we can call them beaten properly. One of the biggest difficulties so far has been save corrupts, which are something that we will all run into on those old original consoles. It just happens. He's also had games like Brave the Search for Spirit Dancer and Hype the Time Quest glitch and break the game, so he had to start over entirely. Tactics-style games like La Pucelle Tactics or Disgaea and horse racing games are just not the done thing for him. He'd rather be playing RPGs like Dark Cloud 2 or playing Twisted Metal Black. If you'd like to check out the PS2 Vets channel, it's down in the description. The second PS2 challenge runner's name is Tuna, and he's been making videos since 2011. However, eventually he saw The Beast working on the N64 challenge and thought, why not do it with my favorite console, the PS2? Hell yeah. He's working solely on the NTSC-U games, or at least games released in North America, and he excludes unbeatable games like the music or gambling games, and he's not a big fan of the chess games. As of this moment in time, he has completed around 30 games, although he has reset his channel not long ago and is slowly building those games back up, so right now he is on game number 8, of a total of around 1,500 games. The biggest difficulty for him so far has been the rules of the challenge, and I absolutely agree. It's up to the creator, but we also have a community of people who like to see things done in the way they like to see things done. Generally, putting things up to a vote or asking the community is the most helpful because the majority of people agreeing with how a game is beaten is the best, but not everyone will agree. The things he's most excited for are those hidden gems, and the PS2 has a lot of them. He also really enjoys the Japanese games that get an English fan translation, which then makes things a lot easier, like Front Mission 5, or some of the leaks that have been happening, or homebrew games like Duke Nukem D-Day. That's super cool, and no one's ever played them before. If you want to join Tuna in his really cool CRT TV aspect of his channel, please look at the description for his link. Our third challenge runner's name is Monkey Mittens, and he didn't really have any real motivation at the beginning, but he thought the PS2 was his favorite console, why not try something fun with it? And he did. You can find him on his channel gunning for those credits. However, sometimes he just has to decide when a game is beaten if a game doesn't have a real ending. And his goal is to play each game from every region. He chooses his games by looking through the list of games to see if something catches his eye, which actually is a really fun way to do it. I mean, the name of a game, clicking into it, seeing some screenshots, that's always exciting, and then you get to play it. He's currently at 85 games deep of 4,218 games total. His biggest difficulty so far, being forced to be a good member of society and make money, while the more important things, like PS2, is left in the dust. There's nothing more exciting than going back and playing some of the games from your childhood, and he says he wants to play Pitfall and Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. But he's not excited for the few MMO games that do actually have ways to play them right now. So he's going to be forced to play these huge MMOs. Also RPGs, but also fighting games, which I can attest to as well. If you'd like to see Monkey Mittens battling madness over how many games he has to complete, the link is in the description. Our fourth entry is Koos, who has been a variety streamer for a little while but was inspired by the Beast, and he already owned a ton of PS2 games, so why not start the challenge, collect all of them, and beat every single one of them. His list of games includes the PAL releases, while the North American titles that never released in Europe can sometimes find its way into his collection. He also finds himself collecting Japanese games that have less text because, well, the language barrier makes it hard to play some of these games. He considers his challenge to be a value for money experience, so he tries to aim for credits, but when a game doesn't have credits or is very short in finding credits like fighting games, he wants to play more of it. He also finds himself enjoying playing the true endings to games, even if they are longer. The total number of games he wants to beat in his challenge seems to always be moving up a little bit as he learns more about some of the games that are available and finds some of those fan translations for Japanese games that make them more possible to beat. So he has around 10% of his overall game collection beaten, and it is continuing to go up, although he says that around the 2,500 game mark, he'll probably be happy with it. His biggest difficulty so far is making sure that the quality of the discs he buys for the PS2 console actually work. There are a lot of games with disc rot and scratches. Some of the systems just don't work anymore, so it's kind of an issue. Koos doesn't really have any games that he dreads to play, as he goes into all of them with an open mind and just wants to experience it for himself. But he's excited to play some RPGs like Shadow Hearts and Wild Arms. If you'd like to see more of Koos and his RPG experience, please check out the link in the description. Our fifth challenger is Brody60, who has been playing the PS2 since he was young, and found the Beast's N64 challenge, who seems to be one that inspires a lot of us to play, and he only owned a few of those PS2 games originally, and once he realized there are thousands he hadn't played, it was time to go for it. His goal is to play all of the North American titles. He emulates them for the most part, but he also owns the games physically. And to pick his games, he usually has a little random number generator, and every 5 games he spins a wheel, and viewers get to weigh in on the choices. Currently, as of writing, he is on game 108 out of 1844, but he does say that it's a rough estimate because it does keep getting higher and sometimes lower. His difficulties so far are the long RPGs, and let me tell you what, there are a lot of those long RPGs on the PS2, but at least they've been fun. However, sports games always rear their ugly head, and for his example, Brunswick Pro Bowling, 80 hours of the same exact bowling game with no additional content. He ended up finishing most of the bowling game off stream because it was so boring. He's not a fan of the horror games, saying they make him uncomfortable and anxious, which I can absolutely understand that, but he's excited for the classics like Final Fantasy, Metal Gear, and Sly Cooper, as well as some of the favorites from his childhood like Time Splitters and 007. If you'd like to see Brody tackle some sweet PS2 games, link will be in the description. Our last but definitely not least runner is Infamous Okami, who grew up playing the PS2 and still upgraded to the newer consoles. They're doing 2 challenges, the PS2 Console Challenge and Platinum Trophies Challenge. For the first time, we see that one of the rules is to play the PS2 games on the hardest difficulty possible from boot and play every main mission and level. That's a good one, I like that one. Infamous Okami doesn't actually have an end number of games yet, but they're at game number 48 for the PS2 Console Challenge. A difficulty that we all share is time management for recording and actually getting the games done. I mean, some of these games can be a slog, they're poorly programmed, or they're just long. They decided to put the credits behind 7 different characters you have to play all the way through the game, so good luck with that. But they say that they're excited for the mascot games like Jak and Daxter, Ratchet & Clank, Sly Cooper. Those are fantastic games. And if you'd like to see the PS2 challenge being done on the hardest difficulties, head over to Infamous Okami's channel with the link in the description. I hope you all liked my overly dramatic video. I really liked the challenge, and I met a lot of cool people. I just thought it'd be fun to make a video about everyone and everything, because I think there's a lot of people who don't even know about this kind of challenge, and it's a legitimately difficult challenge depending on what console you pick. Even if you pick one of the earlier consoles that has shorter games on average, it's still going to take a long time, and then you get into games or systems like the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, which have thousands and thousands of games, and there is no guarantee that anyone's going to be able to finish those ones, because with multiple years ahead of you playing games, and if you make videos, that adds even more time, you might not make it. I mean, my channel's called PS2 or Die. I'm going to play PS2 until I die. My hope is to do it before I die, but you never know. So I really appreciate all of the challenge runners who added in anything about their journeys. It was really helpful because I think it adds a lot of legitimacy to just all the things that everyone's doing. It's just fun, and I hope that anyone who watches this video can take away a little bit of just understanding that video game challenges are not even close to being done. There's so many out there to do, and you know, it's not just playing 1, 2, 3 games or a franchise, or you know, not taking any damage, but there's also tons of other challenges that you can come up with that people will be interested in seeing, and completing them is just a monumental task. So if you'd like to see more content for any kind of challenger type things, all of the challengers, of course, have their stuff in the description of the video so that you can go visit them. And maybe you can spread the word so that other people know what we've got going on. And I hope that you can enjoy some of the live streams that we have. They're a lot of fun. Some of the games are ridiculous. Some of them are crazy. And anytime you come visit us, we'll be here. Even if it's 2, 3, 4 years from now, you'll see us still in the middle of the challenge. It'll be like you never left. And you get to see all these really cool games, especially games on a console you might really like that you never got a chance to play yourself. So come back and see that cool stuff. And I want to thank everyone so much. I can't thank everyone enough. This has been a really fun experience, and I'm raring to go for the next 50 years. So thank you so much. I'll see everyone later.